onto hunting emails and breached data. So there are a few tools that we can utilize in this section that will give us breach data pretty quickly. Now, this has to be done locally, so we'll talk through that. But there are some great tools that we can walk through and just ease this process again utilizing the command line. So let's go ahead and go to our virtual machine. And here, what we're going to be using first is a tool called the Harvester. Now, the Harvester goes way back. I don't believe this is the same one. There used to be a tool called the Harvester like this with the lower H. This one actually has a capital H. I'm not sure if it's the same creator or if somebody took over this. So the one that we're going to use is the one with the capital H. And you can see as of 5 days ago, this was still updated. So they're doing a great job keeping it updated. If you scroll through this here, it says, what is this? It's an OSINT tool. It gathers emails, names, subdomains, IPs, URLs. It does a lot. All right. And we can passively look through a lot of these locations, which some of these you may recognize because we've utilized them in the course. You can also come down here and look at the ones where it requires some sort of API key. We're not going to get into API keys quite yet. Although for GitHub, as an example, Shodan, these all have API keys that you can utilize. It's fairly straightforward, for example, for GitHub, just to go out and get an API key. For some of these, you may have to pay for like this. So we're just going to run it without the API keys, but we'll talk about how you can utilize those if you want. So from here, if we go and we just say the harvester in our command line, we could do a -- help. And I will point out that if you search too much, you can trigger, like, say, it might stop showing results. Like Google, if you use Google, Google might say, hey, you're searching a lot. I'm going to stop showing results for you. So make sure you know what you want to search for because sometimes these will kick back on you. But what we can do here is we can come in here and say, hey, I want to search a domain. So -d domain. You could say the limit, which we'll talk about in a second, but the limit is the number of search results. You can see the default is 500. And then you can say what source do you want to use. So you can come in here and just say basically the harvester. You could say tcm-sec.com if you want with a -d in front of it because that would be important. And then we can come in here and we could say something like a source. So if we do a -b for source, you could do Google, for example, or if you wanted to do multiple, you could say Google and Yahoo. But there's also the option down here of all. So we're just going to go with all. And some of this will say, hey, we can't do this because you do not have the API key. That's okay. We're limiting the results that we're going to get back, but we're still getting back results. We're going to go ahead and go with the default 500 in terms of search results. But basically, if you were to set a length or a different limit here, you could say 1,000, and that would take 1,000 search results. So this would just expand it beyond what you're doing. So we're just going to do a really basic search. I'm going to clear screen here and just hit enter. And you could see, okay, so it's looking for results through VirusTotal. It's going to go through Baidu and then LinkedIn and different sites here and just try to find all the data that it possibly can on us. So this might take just a minute to come back, but hopefully when we come back with the data, what we see is that we have email addresses available to us. We can try to run this again with a less aggressive option. So let me just go ahead and do a new tab. And I'll make this bigger. So while that's running, I'm just going to say the harvester again. We're going to do a domain. Let's try tesla.com. And let's just do something like -b of Google. And maybe just a length of like 100. Just like a really not super aggressive search. Let's see what happens. Okay, and right now I'm getting nothing back, which means that I could be getting blocked from Google because we're doing an aggressive search here. So we'll let this run through. We can try let's try Yahoo or something different. Let's just see if we get anything back while we're waiting on this. You should be getting results if this is your first time scanning. For me, this is not my first time scanning, so I'm probably getting a little bit of a shadow ban here from Google. Okay, this is good. This is much better. So it's looking for IP addresses. It's looking for emails. You can see it found this email of service portal feedback at tesla.com. And then it found a bunch of hosts. Look at these. These are all what? These are subdomains. These are all subdomains. Okay, so this is great. We also see IP addresses related to those. So we've talked about this in the website section, and we're going to talk about this again in the tools section for websites, that we can identify unique information here. So all these subdomains really good, and this was off of one Yahoo search with 100 results. So we'll see what the this results come back with. It looks like Trello's having a little bit of issues here, but depending on how this comes back, I don't expect it to see much in terms of email addresses or in terms of anything. But this is really the what the tool is made for. So say we get a bunch of email addresses, now we have that data available to us. So we've talked about the data from Hunter IO, and this will come into Hunter IO as well. You can see it's limited to 10 on the free plan, so you'll need to do a switch, do a -L10 and then switch. However, you can gather data here. You can gather all kinds of emails if you wanted, and this would be great for password spraying, or for doing some sort of credential stuffing if we have passwords related to these accounts. Now, I'll kind of talk about how we can find passwords related to these accounts as well. So I'm going to switch over to a different machine while this is running, because I have these tools installed over there. Now, with this machine, I do not expect you to install these tools. This is completely optional. This is for information purposes only. Okay. So what I have done is I have a tool that I wrote a while ago. This is called Breach Parse. I'm going to click on this. So if you go to Google, you just type in Breach Parse. You'll see, again, what is here, what you can identify. Here's the how-to or the steps. You can look at the stars again to see the rating. This has not been updated since 2019, so keep that in mind. But what we have here is we have a tool for parsing breached passwords. There is this gigantic database. This is 44 gigabytes, 44 gigabytes in this database. Basically, you can download this. This has a bunch of usernames, passwords, all in a database. You can keep this locally and you can search through it. Super, super easy to do, except the fact that it's 44 gigabytes. So keep that in mind. Otherwise, what I have done is I have put this into a folder. So this says, hey, if you don't store the password list, you have to specify the location. But basically, I put this into the breach parse folder, downloaded this breach compilation folder, put it in there. And then we just run it. So if we wanted to run this tool with the database behind us, what we can do is we can come in here and just literally type in something like this. We could just say breach parse. We could say, I want to look at tesla.com. And then I'm going to save this as tesla.txt. All right. And this will go ahead and this will just produce a search. Now, this takes a little bit. Again, there's 44 gigs of data to go through. So this maybe takes up to 5 minutes. Now, there's another side of this. There is a wonderful tool called Hate Mail, H8 Mail. So if we take a look at Hate Mail is actually built into the platform that you on the VM for the OSINT VM. So this is a tool that you do not need to download or anything along those lines. But Hate Mail has the ability to interact with a lot of the nice tools that have breach passwords. Look, have I been pwned? So it can identify breaches. You'll need a key. Look, anything that has a key, you'll need an API key for. Hunter.io public, Hunter.io with the key. Snuspace or Snoospace, however you want to say it, Leak Lookup. These are sites we talked about. Look, this Scala here, or Scala, I don't know how to say this one either. This is a free one. You can look through here. Dhash, which we talked about as well. Intelex, we talked about as well. So all these different services, if you get the API keys for these, you can utilize these pretty easily, which we're not going to cover. There is detail here, but all these API keys, for the most part, require payment. So if you have Dhash, even if you have a Dhash account, you still have to have a Dhash API account, which they're fairly cheap for searches. But this is a way that you can do it from the command line and just download everything. One of the nice features of this, though, is, well, look, you can put also, if you read the details here, you can do a config.ini with all of your API keys, and then it will just run your target through. So what I am doing on my breach parse search, which is almost done, is we are taking this and we're looking for anybody in Tesla.com that has been breached. In this instance, what you're doing here with Hate Mail is you will be looking for a specific target. Okay, so remember how we found shark@tesla.com. So we have hate mail. If we do hate mail here, and then we say target is shark at tesla.com, and we can just do a quick look at here and just see if this comes back with anything. It's going to look and see, okay, do we see it in Hunter Public? It says there's 467 related emails. So what this is telling us is that this is a real email that shows up, but that's all we get out of this. Now, say we have the breach compilation database, which it actually can run with as well. So before I show you breach parse, if you look at this, it says -BC breach compilation, same 44 gigs. You can run through this and do something along these lines. So if we come in here and we say, hey, I want to look at, I'm going to clear this, and I just say breach compilation. I tell it where the folder is, which is going to be in opt. It's going to be in breach parse and then breach compilation. All right. And then I just say SK. I want to skip any kind of checks. I'm going to hit enter here, and then it's going to look for this specific account. So look how quick that was. Immediately, it came back and it found, hey, shark at tesla.com. Remember, this is something we looked at before. We saw the DADE. Came through really quick. The downside of this is that it does not have the ability, at least that I'm aware of, to search for specific domains in general as a whole. I think that's a downside of this. But you can pull down usernames, say like when we're running the harvester. Let's go back and check on the harvester really quick. Okay, so it did not, it looked like it conked out, it had an issue here. But say we found a list of different email addresses, like a whole list here. We could copy those and then put this into a targets. I'll go back to the other one. We could put this into a targets file. So you see how it has a targets.txt here? Instead of just specifying a target, we can specify a file with a bunch of emails and see if anybody shows up in this breach compilation data. So there's one way of doing it. There's a bunch of ways to search for individual people or users in, say, like a dehashed or something along those lines, though I do think that the dehashed interface is much better to just utilize from a web interface. Now, if we take a look at breach parse, we can come in here and we can just say, so I'm just going to say gedit the Tesla, and then this breaks down into 3 files. I'm going to look at the master file. Okay, so I realize this is going to be a little bit small. Actually, let me see. I might have changed my leaf pad settings to make this a little bigger. So let's see if I can Tesla master this one. Okay, so this is a little bit bigger. So what you can see here is it pulled down all that data for us, and we didn't have to go crazy on the searching. It looks like it overwrote or partially rewrote a file that was already there because I've done this search before. But anyway, you can see we pulled down all the Tesla breach data from before, and we don't have to identify a specific user from a search history. So I do like this form of this. When I am running through my methodology, I will run breach parse first. I will just do that to collect any sort of data, any kind of information out there in regards to passwords, in regards to users. A lot of these users may have moved on. It doesn't matter. It's data. It's something that could be of use to us. Now, of course, you can take breach parse and you can utilize the feature. You could think of it, if you've ever used Linux, it's just one big grep. Okay, so if we think of grep, this is for the people who haven't used Linux. If we say cat Tesla master, right, like this, it's going to cat out all this data. But say we only want the shark data. So we just say grep shark. And now we've got anything related to shark. That's what this breach parse is really doing. It's a one big giant grep. So if you wanted to come in here and look for, say, instead of at Tesla, you can specify and say shark at tesla.com. And then put this out to Tesla and see what comes back related to that user. Or if there's a specific username, you don't even have to use this at tesla.com. Say if you know somebody has a unique username and it's like shark, I don't know, just put a bunch of numbers. And then you can search that and see if it comes back for anything either, and then have a specific search based on a user. So this tool allows for a little bit more flexibility, but hate mail is a great tool as well. I think they have each their pros and cons. So that's really it. I just kind of want to show you the ways that you can get emails. Again, this is just like the last video. The Harvester is not the only tool that's out there that'll scrape email addresses from the web, but it's an example of one that will do it for you. Same thing with breach parse, same thing with hate mail. These aren't the only tools that are out there that will sift through local data or online data, but they're they're relatively good tools, and they're incredibly useful. So this comes back down to, hey, what can I do to expand upon the lessons that I'm being shown, and how can I take this further? But this again is the methodology that I would utilize if I were looking up data, and I would go to breach parse first, and then I would go out to the web and I would utilize something like dhash and pull down even more data compared to what I'm seeing. So hopefully that was useful for you. That's it for this video, and we're going to go ahead and move on to the next one.